This film is based on a true story. A young woman named Lizzie Borden tries not to notice how her maid named Bridget is nervous. Soon after Lizzie entered her wealthy family's home, screams were heard. A body lay on the floor. It was August 4, 1892. Soon police questioned Lizzie, who claimed she didn't see anything suspicious. The officer was primarily interested in whether Lizzie's father had any enemies. 6 months earlier, a young woman came to work as a maid at the Borden family estate. The homeowner, Abby, told the girl that from now on she would be called Maggie, and her duties would be limited to the first floor. According to Abby, her stepdaughters Lizzie and Emma are very unsociable, so the maid will not often see them. Abby escorted Bridget to her room, where she would live. The girl did not expect Lizzie to come to her in the evening. The woman was outraged to learn that Abby had given the maid a new name. Later, Lizzie was going to go to the theater, but her father said she would not leave the house unaccompanied. The daughter reminded her father that the theater was her only outlet in this life. Andrew took pity and let her go, but only until midnight. Other women in the town wondered why the Borden house was always so dark. It turned out that Andrew didn't trust electricity and considered it wasteful. During the performance, Lizzie suddenly had a seizure. Later, the family doctor visited their home. Unfortunately, there is no medicine to help Lizzie's illness, so medicine is powerless to help her. When Lizzie regained consciousness, she saw the sister next to her. Emma promised her that everything would be okay. At breakfast, Lizzie didn't eat anything, which annoyed Abby. Feeling better, the woman read aloud to their domestic fowl in the coop. Bridget overheard this. Suddenly Lizzie told the maid that there are things that men shouldn't know about. At night, Bridget was reading a book given to her by the lady of the house. It turned out that the girl could hardly read, so Lizzie decided to teach her. This brought them closer together. Suddenly the woman felt unwell again, but she quickly felt better. Meanwhile, Andrew saw a note under the door of the house stating that no one would save him from the inevitable. The next day, Mr. Borden approached the maid, saying that everyone in the house was very satisfied with her work, so he was willing to increase her salary. Bridget was embarrassed and confused. At night, the girl woke up to someone entering her room. Mr. Borden ordered Maggie to be docile. She didn't want it, but there was nothing she could do. When it was all over, Andrew returned to bed with his wife. She had not slept the whole time. The next day, Bridget was crying. This was noticed by Lizzie, who brought her a book. On the porch of the house, someone left another letter. An anonymous sender wrote, "Your sin will find you." That same night, there was a knock on the door, waking the homeowners. Bridget also woke up. She watched from the window as Andrew went outside with a gun in his hand. Finding no one, he returned to the house. Lizzie thinks that it is time to tell the constable about these threats, but the father says that it is their family's matter and should not concern anyone else. Lizzie decided to tell her father directly that he had acted very recklessly by taking land away from farmers. They are simple people and do not understand how laws work. However, Andrew does not feel guilty. If the farmers paid their fees on time, their land would still be theirs. Not knowing how to live on, Lizzie came to church to pray. During the day, her uncle John Morse arrived, who persuaded Andrew to buy modern equipment because old methods are impossible to use on such huge plots of land as his. However, Andrew is not going to spend money on this. Lizzie overheard her father discussing the threatening letters with John. Judging by the handwriting, they were written by one person. Andrew is most worried about his daughters, so he wants John to take care of them in case something happens to him. Someone will have to have the right to act on their behalf. Later, Andrew gave Lizzie a locket with a picture of her mother. They all miss her dearly. Andrew suggests that his daughter start over with a clean slate. This is exactly what Lizzie wants. When her father left, she stole some money and took some jewelry. Emma thinks that their father will never believe that a thief was in the house, but Lizzie didn't want to listen to her. She sold all the stolen jewelry to a pawn shop. In the evening, the inspector questioned the maid, asking where she was at the time of the robbery. The inspector intended to search Bridget's room, but suddenly Andrew said that it would not be necessary. The fact is that he spoke to the owner of the pawn shop where Lizzie sold the stolen jewelry today. The head of the family took an axe and got rid of all the birds as punishment. All this time his daughter was begging him to stop. During dinner, the family members did not speak to each other. Andrew ordered his daughter to eat, but she did not obey. Moreover, it is unpleasant for her to sit at the same table with her stepmother and uncle. Lizzie wonders why the father wants his inheritance to go to them too, not just his daughters. When Lizzie called Andrew a coward and a liar, he hit her. Lizzie got up from the table and locked herself in her room.
Open the door!
The father knocked on the door for a long time, while the daughter had another seizure. When she felt better, her sister said that now their father will probably put her in a psychiatric hospital. Bridget took care of Lizzie all the time. Recovered, The woman went to the constable and demanded an explanation as to why all decisions were made by outsiders on her behalf, including those regarding the inheritance. The constable was not authorized to disclose confidential information. But Lizzie still suspects that her uncle John Morse will become her guardian after the father's demise. If this happens, she and Emma will be in a dire situation. Bridget found a letter addressed to her in the mailbox. Since the girl could not yet read perfectly, she asked Lizzie to do it for her. It turned out that Bridget's mother passed away after a prolonged illness. The girl burst into tears and couldn't calm down for a long time. In the evening, Andrew expressed his condolences to her, making dirty hints. Bridget looked at the axe, but dared not do anything about it. In the morning, Lizzie found a note on her bed from Bridget, thanking her for the support. At night, Lizzie woke up to suspicious sounds and left her room to check what was happening. She was horrified to realize that her father was in Bridget's room. This rekindled her feelings of hatred with renewed vigor. Breaking her mirror, Lizzie left the shards under Bridget's door so that the father would hurt himself when leaving. The next morning, the maid told her that she couldn't quit because she would be homeless and hungry. Mr. Borden is a wealthy, influential man who is allowed to do whatever he wants. When the women met again, Lizzie asked Bridget for forgiveness for everything that was happening to her. She is ashamed that she is the daughter of a man like Andrew. Lizzie can't live like this anymore and wants to escape. While changing the bedding, Bridget found another note from Lizzie. From now on, they constantly exchanged notes and spent more and more time together. They couldn't hold back their feelings and almost kissed, but Emma's voice interrupted them. During a walk, Lizzie noticed John leaving a note on the door. At night, comparing the handwriting on the documents and the threatening notes, the sisters were convinced of their hunch. All along, the threats were addressed to their family by John, who dreams of taking over his niece's inheritance. Lizzie realizes that the father won't listen to them because he trusts John unconditionally. She decided to talk to her uncle, telling him that he can't get away with it. However, John wasn't scared, letting Lizzie know that she was not needed by anyone. That's the way it was and always would be. Bridget witnessed this. In the morning, Lizzie came to her room. It turned out that John had left at dawn without even saying goodbye to Andrew. Lizzie and Bridget could barely contain the passion that had arisen between them. Andrew came home earlier than usual and asked Abby where Maggie was. The wife doesn't like the fact that her husband is having an affair with the maid. Meanwhile, Lizzie and Bridget indulged in passion in the coop. They had no idea that Andrew was watching them. At night, he grabbed Bridget, insulting her with dirty words. The next day, Andrew told his daughter that she shouldn't spend time with Bridget. Mr. Borden intends to fire the maid in September because his daughter's attachment to her is unhealthy. When Andrew left, Abby told her stepdaughter that the father would never forgive her. But Lizzie didn't care about the stepmother's opinion, who also wanted to send her to a mental institution. At night, contrary to prohibition, she came to Bridget and promised that she would not let anyone hurt her. They understand that the price of their love will be high, but they are willing to pay it. Finding her father's will, Lizzie burned it. Then someone took an axe from the shed. On August 4, 1892, the Borden family estate was filled with wild screams. Seeing the father's body, Lizzie asked Bridget to run to the police. The maid behaved strangely. Inspectors arrived. It turned out that not only Andrew, but also Abby was dead. The inspector asked Lizzie if her father had enemies. Of course, Mr. Borden had many enemies. Soon the funerals took place. John could not find Andrew's will and suspected that his nieces were involved in its disappearance. Lizzie became the main suspect. The crime weapon was found at the scene, the axe with hair. The woman also had a motive. According to the inspector, she hoped to get the inheritance that the father had bequeathed to them. Emma said it was all an absolute lie. Besides, in addition to Lizzie, Maggie was in the house at the moment of the crime. But the inspector did not consider this version because several witnesses saw the maid washing windows outside the house when the bodies were found. Lizzie came to Bridget's room to say goodbye. A few minutes later, the policeman came for her and arrested her. The woman was taken to a jail cell. What happened was all over the newspapers. The first hearing was held behind closed doors out of respect for Lizzie's family. One expert gave his opinion, saying that all the hair on the axe belonged not to a human, but to a bird. Meanwhile, John feverishly tried to find the will. Bridget wanted to leave. Emma still suspected the maid's involvement, but allowed her to leave. Soon John visited Lizzie in her cell, informing her that the experts had established that Abby Borden had died 90 minutes before her husband. The law stipulates that if a husband dies before his spouse, wife's family inherits. The criminal clearly took this fact into account. In John's opinion, this is the most convincing evidence against Lizzie. But she defied provocation and denied her involvement. She is not afraid of John and told him that he will not be safe from this day forward. His only chance of salvation is to leave town. John was infuriated by this. Bridget wanted to write a letter to Lizzie, but changed her mind and crumpled the paper in her hand. The next day, Bridget testified in court. She was asked where Miss Borden was at the time of the crime. Bridget said that Lizzie was in the yard all morning. It was a hot day, so there was nothing unusual about that. But not everyone found her testimony convincing. Despite this, Bridget continued to insist that Lizzie did not go into the house. Lizzie did not expect Bridget to come to her in prison. The girl asked her directly who she was to her and what she wanted. Lizzie replied that she just wanted to be with her. According to Bridget, this is impossible. They live in a world where men decide everything. Next events return us to August 4, 1892. In the morning, Lizzie ordered the maid to give a letter to Mrs. Borden exactly at 9 o'clock. After that, Lizzie hid a bird from the coop in a basket. Bridget was very nervous, while Lizzie tried to behave deliberately calmly. After Lizzie took off her clothes, Bridget, as agreed, delivered the letter to Abby Borden. Learning that her friend was allegedly ill, Abby was going to visit her. She did not notice Lizzie, who was in her room all this time. Lizzie attacked the stepmother and took her life. When Bridget saw this through the window, she felt sick. Lizzie got rid of the traces of the crime. Returning the axe to its place, she returned to her room. Someone knocked on the door. Terrified, Bridget heard Andrew Borden resent having to wait on the doorstep of his own house. Lizzie went downstairs, and trying to act as if nothing had happened, offered her father soda. Andrew was slightly surprised by such kindness from his daughter. Lizzie, under the pretext of picking pears, went to the garden. At that moment, Bridget began to act. Like Lizzie before, she took off her clothes so as not to soil it, and prepared to attack Mr. Borden. However, Bridget lacked the determination to do so. Andrew thought that the maid had gone insane, but when his daughter came in and took the axe from Bridget's hands, he realized with horror that they were in collusion. Lizzie did what she had to. Acting with cold-blooded calm, Lizzie took the same axe and returned to the coop to make everything look as if nothing suspicious had happened. After sawing off the handle of the axe, Lizzie threw it away and burned all the incriminating evidence. When the time came, she screamed, playing out a pre-rehearsed scene. Then Lizzie called Bridget, who was also supposed to play her role. Lizzie instructed her to run to the police, as they had agreed. In the present, Bridget asked Lizzie to promise her that she would never write or look for her again. When Bridget said she didn't want anything from her, Lizzie was puzzled. The girl left the town at the first opportunity. On the way, she couldn't stop thinking about Lizzie. Next, we are told about the real characters in the story. Lizzie Borden was acquitted. The jurors did not believe that a woman of such high standing in society could commit such a monstrous crime. Lizzie never married, and she donated a large part of her fortune to a public organization.